He said she wasn't a supermodel. He said she was boring. So she did what any brilliant, betrayed lawyer would do: she used the prenup he forgot about, and took everything. This isn't just a breakup. This is a reckoning. Sophia had always prided herself on her career as a successful lawyer, forging her path through hard work and determination. She had built a life that many would envy: an established career, a beautiful home, and a husband, Xander, who seemed perfect in every way. At first, their marriage appeared to be the ideal union. They met during law school, both driven and ambitious, supporting each other's dreams and goals. It felt as though they were meant to be together, two people who understood the pressures of the legal world and could face life's challenges side by side. But as the years passed, cracks began to form. Xander's behavior started to change. He became distant, spending long hours at work, often disappearing for days under the guise of business trips. Sophia, though focused on her own demanding career, couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She had seen the signs: the missed calls, the secretive messages, the cold distance between them. Yet, she pushed these thoughts aside, convincing herself that it was just the stress of their high-pressure lives. It wasn't until she stumbled upon his old laptop that the truth hit her like a slap in the face. A hidden Facebook account, with messages and photos that left no room for doubt: Xander was having an affair. The woman was beautiful, everything Sophia wasn't in Xander's eyes, at least that's how he had made her feel. She had always tried to be the supportive wife, the one who was there through thick and thin, but somehow, that wasn't enough for him. Heartbroken and confused, Sophia confronted him. The anger in her voice was barely contained as she demanded answers. But instead of remorse, she was met with cold indifference. Xander's words stung. He told her that she was no longer interesting, that she had neglected him, that she was not the supermodel he desired. His words were a punch to the gut, leaving her feeling small and worthless. How could the man she had loved for so long treat her this way? In that moment, the world she had built with him began to crumble. But amidst the pain, something else started to rise within her. A fire, a burning desire to take control of her life. This betrayal, this heartache, it would not define her. She would rise above it. As Xander coldly declared that he was divorcing her, Sophia made a decision. She would not be a victim in her own story. She would take back the power, and Xander would learn that there were consequences to his actions. The path ahead would not be easy, but the resolve in her heart was unshakable. This was just the beginning of Sophia's transformation. And soon, she would learn how deep the betrayal had gone and how far she was willing to go to ensure justice was served. Sophia's hands trembled slightly as she sat in front of her husband's old laptop, the cold glow of the screen illuminating her face in the dimly lit room. She had felt it in her gut, the nagging suspicion that something was off. For months now, Xander's behavior had been different: his late nights at the office, his growing indifference, the constant business trips that always seemed to stretch longer than necessary. The distance between them had grown, and no matter how much she tried to ignore it, something was wrong. She had always trusted Xander, trusted him to keep his promises, to cherish their marriage. But that trust had slowly eroded, piece by piece, until all that was left was the painful gnawing of doubt. When she had finally decided to confront him, she didn't expect it to feel like this. It was a cold reality that froze her to the core, but she couldn't back down now. The truth had to come to light, no matter how painful. After months of quietly observing his habits, Sophia had decided it was time to take matters into her own hands. A simple search through his old laptop, the one he had carelessly left on the kitchen counter, revealed what she had feared most: a hidden Facebook account. It wasn't just any account. It was a private one, filled with messages that made her stomach churn. Photos of Xander with a woman she didn't recognize, someone who looked nothing like her. The intimacy in the words they shared, the sweet nothings that made her feel small, reminded her of all the times he had belittled her. Her heart sank, and tears welled up in her eyes. How had she been so blind? For months, she had been so focused on her demanding career, on building a future, that she had overlooked the signs: the late nights, the strange texts, the sudden disappearance during weekends. But now, seeing the evidence in front of her, everything made sense. Xander had been lying to her. He had been unfaithful, and for the first time in years, Sophia felt truly betrayed. She sat frozen, staring at the screen, her mind racing. She had always been strong, had always prided herself on being in control, but in this moment, everything felt out of reach. How had she not seen it? How had she trusted him so completely? The anger bubbled up inside her, hot and furious. She had always tried to be the perfect wife, the one who supported his dreams, put his needs first. Yet, here he was, with someone else, someone who apparently held the attention he no longer gave her. The decision was clear. She couldn't let this go. Sophia stood up, wiping away the tears that had fallen without her realizing. It was time to confront Xander. She grabbed her phone and dialed his number, her hand still shaking as she pressed it to her ear. When he answered, she wasted no time. "Xander," she said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her, "are you cheating on me?" There was a brief pause before Xander's familiar voice came through, cold and indifferent. "I don't know what you're talking about, Sophia," he replied, almost dismissively. "You've been so caught up in your cases that you've neglected me. You're not exactly a supermodel, you know. I'm not interested anymore." The words hit Sophia like a slap in the face, but she didn't flinch. "I have proof, Xander," she said, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. "I know about her. And I'm done with your lies." For a moment, there was silence. Then, his response came, even more heartless than before. "Good," he said, "now I don't have to hide her anymore. I've already made my decision. I'll divorce you and marry someone who's worthy of me." His words stung, like salt in an open wound. Sophia stood there, staring at the phone, unable to believe what she had just heard. The man she had loved for so long, the man she had built a life with, was now so casually throwing it all away. But as the cold reality set in, a new resolve took over her. Xander's betrayal wasn't going to break her. It wasn't going to define her. She would fight back. She would not let him get away with this. The confrontation had shaken her to her core, but in that moment, something inside her clicked. Sophia realized that her life was about to change forever. The anger and heartbreak she felt would fuel her determination to take control of the situation. She would no longer be the victim in her own story. It was time for Xander to face the consequences of his actions. And Sophia was ready. Sophia's heart hammered in her chest as she sat across from Xander in their once shared home, now feeling like a prison of lies and betrayal. Her hands were still clammy from the phone call, but she'd finally gathered the courage to confront him. She had uncovered the truth, the proof that had been staring her in the face for far too long, and now there was no turning back. The affair wasn't just a suspicion anymore, it was a cold, hard reality. She watched him, trying to read the man who had been her husband for so long, but instead of remorse or guilt, all she saw was a distant, almost eerie indifference. Xander's eyes, once full of affection for her, were now veiled in a cold detachment that sent shivers down her spine. He didn't even flinch as she laid the evidence in front of him, messages, photos, all of it. He had been seeing another woman, someone who clearly meant more to him than Sophia ever had. "Are you seriously going to sit there and deny it?" she asked, her voice shaking with a mixture of rage and disbelief. "I have proof, Xander. How can you look me in the eye and still lie to me?" He sat back in his chair, his expression unreadable, almost amused by her fury. "Sophia," he said with a sigh, as though discussing the weather, "you're just not that interesting anymore. You've become so caught up in your work, neglecting me. You're not exactly a supermodel, you know. I'm just bored." Her breath caught in her throat, and for a moment, the room seemed to spin. The pain of his words pierced through her like a dagger. She had given him everything, her trust, her love, her time. And this was how he saw her? Not even worthy of his respect, let alone his love. He continued, indifferent to the devastation in her eyes. "Look, Sophia, it's over. I don't need to hide it anymore. I've moved on. I'll be with someone who actually gets me. Someone worthy of me. The finality in his voice crushed her. She had always believed in their love, in their marriage. But hearing him speak of their years together as if they were nothing more than a waste of time broke her heart. She had thought she knew this man, had trusted him with everything. But now, he was throwing it all away without a second thought. Tears threatened to spill, but she refused to let them fall. This wasn't the time for weakness. She would not let him see how deeply his betrayal had wounded her. Instead, she straightened her back, fighting to regain control. "How can you just do this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, but sharp with anger. "You don't even feel bad about it. You don't even care." Xander merely shrugged, his eyes cold, his demeanor entirely dismissive. "Feel bad? For what? For finally being free? You never understood me, Sophia. You never understood that I wanted more than just a pretty face and a law degree. I need someone who can give me the attention I deserve." The words cut deep, but they also lit a fire inside her. He thought she was just a pretty face, someone easily dismissed. Well, he was wrong. She wasn't the woman he married anymore. She wasn't the one blindly loving him, ignoring his flaws, letting him manipulate her. She was stronger than that now. And she would make him pay for everything he had taken from her. "Fine," she said, her voice steady, though her hands clenched into fists at her sides. "If you think I'm not enough, then you'll see just how much I'm worth. You'll see what happens when you push me to this point." She stood up, turning toward the door. Her decision was made. No more tears. No more second chances. She would take this fight to the courtroom if she had to. Xander had underestimated her, thinking she would simply roll over and let him walk all over her. But he was wrong. She would not let him get away with this. As she opened the door to leave, Xander called after her, his voice mocking. "You can't win, you know. You'll never get what you think you're owed." She paused for a moment, looking over her shoulder at him, her eyes burning with determination. "We'll see about that," she replied. "You can't take everything from me, Xander. Not this time." With that, she stepped out, her heart still heavy, but her resolve unshaken. The man she had loved was gone. And in his place was a woman ready to fight back, to take what was rightfully hers and ensure that Xander would never forget the mistake he made in thinking he could destroy her. The battle was only just beginning. Sophia sat at her desk, flipping through the pages of the prenuptial agreement with a sense of grim satisfaction. She had signed it years ago, thinking little of its implications, but today, that piece of paper had become her greatest ally. She knew exactly how to use it. Xander had betrayed her, but he wouldn't get away with it. The prenuptial agreement was clear, and she would use it to ensure that he would face the consequences of his actions. Her fingers lingered over the section that clearly stated her entitlement to half of Xander's business should he ever cheat. It wasn't a matter of mere revenge, it was a matter of securing what was rightfully hers. He had taken so much from her already, she wasn't about to let him steal any more. The power she felt, knowing the law was on her side, filled her with an undeniable strength. The decision to use the prenup was not made lightly. But Xander had left her with no choice. He had humiliated her, discarded her without a second thought, and now, he would pay the price. She had taken her time, carefully planning her next steps. After all, this wasn't just about her heart, it was about making sure that Xander understood the true cost of betrayal. The moment she had been preparing for arrived. Xander's lawyer, Jake, had called, arranging a meeting at a cafe. Sophia knew this was her opportunity to take full control of the situation. She was no longer the woman caught in the crossfire of a broken marriage, she was a skilled lawyer, a woman who knew exactly how to navigate this mess. She arrived at the cafe, her confidence unwavering, her mind focused. Jake was already there, looking somewhat uneasy. His eyes widened when he saw her. He clearly hadn't expected Sophia to show up. She had kept a low profile during the proceedings, but now, it was time to make her presence known. "Hello, Jake," she greeted, her voice calm and steady. I'm sure you're wondering why I'm here. Jake stammered, clearly uncomfortable. Yes. I wasn't expecting you to be involved in this case. Sophia smiled. Well, I'm the wife. I signed the prenup, and I'm making sure it's enforced. Xander made a mistake, and I intend to make sure he pays for it. She noticed the flicker of recognition in Jake's eyes as she said the word prenup. He was beginning to understand. He hadn't been fully informed about the terms, but now, he was about to learn all he needed to know. What exactly are you planning? Jake asked cautiously, still unsure of how to proceed. Sophia's gaze hardened. I'm planning to use the prenuptial agreement to my advantage. Xander's affair isn't just a betrayal of our marriage, it's a violation of the terms he agreed to. He owes me half of his business, and I intend to make sure he gives it to me. Jake's face paled as the gravity of the situation dawned on him. He hadn't been fully aware of the prenup's clauses, but now he saw the situation for what it was. He had assumed that Xander would be able to wiggle his way out of the divorce without any major repercussions, but Sophia was no fool. She knew exactly what she was doing. I see, Jake said, his voice faltering. But I need to see the documentation. You can't just claim something without proof. Sophia slid the papers across the table, her eyes never leaving his. I have all the proof you'll need, Jake. Messages, photographs, everything. Xander thought he could hide his affair, but the evidence is irrefutable. Jake hesitated, scanning the papers she had handed him. He knew this was no ordinary divorce case. Xander had underestimated Sophia, and now, he would have to deal with the consequences. The once confident lawyer was now visibly rattled. I wasn't aware of any of this, Jake muttered, his voice laced with disbelief. This changes things. Sophia nodded. It sure does. And Xander's little game is over. He won't get away with this. He thought he could drag out the divorce, but I'm done playing nice. Jake sat back, the weight of the situation settling in. I understand, he said, his voice softer now. I'll talk to Xander and let him know we'll need to adjust our approach. But, he's going to fight this. He's not going to give up easily. Sophia's eyes gleamed with determination. Let him fight. I'll be ready for whatever he throws at me. I've worked too hard for too long to let him take everything from me. As she left the cafe, the sense of empowerment was overwhelming. Xander had thought he could break her, but she was stronger than ever. The divorce was inevitable now, and with the prenup on her side, she would secure her future. She wouldn't let Xander's manipulation win. He had made a grave mistake, and now, she would make sure he understood the cost of his betrayal. Sophia had regained control, and nothing, not Xander, nor his lawyer, could take that away from her. She would fight for what was hers, and in the end, she would emerge victorious. Xander's downfall, financial ruin and desperation. Xander's life had taken a dramatic turn. Once a proud businessman, he now found himself spiraling down into financial ruin, the consequences of his actions becoming clearer with each passing day. His business, once thriving, was now on the brink of collapse, and his desperation was palpable. The reality of the divorce was sinking in, and he knew he could no longer avoid the financial fallout of his infidelity. Xander had always prided himself on his wealth, his business acumen, and the power he wielded in his world. But as the divorce proceedings moved forward, he found himself losing grip on all of it. The prenup, the one document he had underestimated, now stood as the barrier between him and his fortune. His efforts to delay the divorce only made things worse. He tried to manipulate his lawyers, attempting to use them as pawns in his desperate attempt to keep his business intact. He had no idea that Sophia, with her legal expertise and unwavering determination, was always one step ahead of him. As the days dragged on, Xander's financial situation deteriorated. The constant pressure of the divorce, the mounting legal fees, and the loss of his business shares took its toll. The lifestyle he had once taken for granted, a grand mansion, a flourishing business, and the constant admiration of his peers, was slipping through his fingers. His money, the lifeblood of his ego, was now being drained by the very affair he had tried to hide, the very woman he thought would make him happy. Instead, she had disappeared, leaving him alone with nothing but his shattered pride. The desperation in his voice became evident when he called Sophia, begging her to reconsider. His earlier arrogance had been replaced with a plea for mercy. "You can take everything else, Sophia, but not the business. Please," he pleaded, his voice cracking under the weight of his own failure. But Sophia wasn't moved. She had been through too much to fall for his empty words now. The once powerful businessman, who had discarded her so callously, was now at her mercy. She had been the one to suffer, yet she had fought back, and now, she was the one in control. Xander's business, the very thing he had tried to hold over her head, was slipping away. His pride had led him here, to a place where he had nothing left but his own defeat. As Xander continued to try and hold on to what remained of his wealth, Sophia was thriving. She had moved into her childhood home, reasserting her independence, and as the divorce progressed, she became more and more empowered. Her legal knowledge, her strategic thinking, and her unwavering resolve had turned the tide. She had the evidence she needed, and she wasn't afraid to use it. Every move she made, from securing her rightful share of the business to confronting Xander's lawyer, was a step toward reclaiming her life, her dignity, and her power. Xander, on the other hand, found himself scrambling. He was no longer the man in charge, the one with all the answers. He was now the one caught in a web of his own making, unable to escape the consequences of his betrayal. His once thriving business was crumbling, and with every passing day, his financial ruin became more certain. In a final desperate attempt, Xander tried to sway Sophia, offering her everything he had left in exchange for her forgiveness. He even promised to end his affair, to cut ties with the woman he had so recklessly pursued. But it was too late. The damage had been done. Sophia had moved on,